And there was a guy in the class said to me why he was there. He pointed to his arm. He rolled up his sleeve. He pointed to his arm. He said, "The color of my skin. See, that's the color of my skin." I thought that was an excuse at the time. I said to him, "The color of your skin," I said, I'm not very sophisticated in these things, so to me, your skin is the same color as the skin of an Asian. And I don't see any Asians in the class here today. Why is that? Why is everybody in the class mostly African American or Hispanic? Why is that if it's got to do with the color of your skin? Because they've got the same color, right? Again, I was trying to get race out of it. The question of slave history came up. You know, we've been enslaved, we've been denied our rights, etc., etc., etc. We didn't get any reparations, which was actually true. And I said, well, of course, you know, that happened like 4 generations ago. Your great-grandparents were freed, and we're now 4 generations on. Can you use this excuse forever, is what I was asking. Well, can you use that excuse forever? Well, the more I looked at it, the more I thought, no, slavery is alive and well. I'm looking at it here. What I saw with my own eyes was, the blacker your skin, the sterner your sentence. You would get thrown into jail more quickly, and you would spend more time there according to the blackness of your skin. If you were light-skinned African American or light-skinned color, you generally wouldn't serve as much time as a darker skinned guy. This is absolute discrimination, unconscious, institutionalized. And say, okay, so we got to deal with that. We want to talk about that. We want to talk about slave history. My friend Kenny Johnson, who referred to me as Whitey, was making the point that he had landed in jail, and that all sorts of the others had landed in jail because of the history of black slavery and the awful treatment that the Africans had received on the ships when they came from Africa to America, and that this had been perpetuated and was still there. So, and I was thinking about that, and I thought, you know what? I don't want to get into an argument about this, but I'm going to produce some readings for you on what it was like on the journey for the slaves, and what it was like the journey that the English inflicted upon the Irish mostly, who they sent as convicts to Australia. The conditions on the ship bringing the slaves to America was such that people could stretch out, and the master of the ship had a financial incentive in bringing the slaves there in the best conditions he could, all things considered, because he was going to sell them. He was going to sell them. They were assets. So he wanted them to live, and he wanted them to arrive fit. And so even though there was some cruelty happened there, they were fundamentally well looked after. However, the convicts who endured this 8-month journey to Australia was a far worse journey, and they were shackled. They had shackles. They had steel fixed shackles around their legs. Their ankles were rubbed raw to the bone. The food was dreadful. A whole lot of them died there. And if the guy next to you died on the way there, you were happy about that because you got his food. You know what? Finally, there'd be someone in the class say, John, we've got to face the truth here. The people who went to Australia, they got far worse physical treatment. And say, fine, okay. But after they landed, let's just deal with what happened after they landed. What did the Australians have that maybe the Africans didn't have? Oh, what was that, John? You know, we would bring up the discussion. First, they knew where they came from. They spoke the same language. Their language they spoke English in Australia. They had the same religion. They knew where their homes were. They knew they could earn their freedom and go back there. Even though they had to work back there, they were only meant to be there for a certain amount of time, and so effectively they were just in a jail for a little while. Contrast that with the treatment of the African Americans. Now, they lost their language. They lost their religion. They lost their rituals. They didn't know who their family was. They lost their friends. They lost the sense of community. They lost their humanity. Suddenly they were subhuman, looked upon as subhuman, and treated worse than animals. So then at the end of the day, who got the worst treatment psychologically? Psychologically, who got the worst treatment? Well, the answer is clearly the slaves, you know, because they had nothing to look forward to except their death and going to a new world later. There's a new world coming. Who was the person who's saying that? Nina Simone. There's a new world coming and it's just around the corner. That's what they had to believe in. And then let's just deal with the other issue. So I gave them Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist incarcerated in Auschwitz. And he wrote this wonderful book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he was there and he described exactly what happened, how the Germans treated the inmates of Auschwitz. And somebody in the class said to me, well, that was the Germans and the Jews, right, John? Germans and the Jews. Well, you know what? As far as I know, everyone in Auschwitz was a German citizen. They were a citizen. If you want to add in their religion, by all means, you are welcome to do that. But let's say this is what the Germans were inflicting on the Germans. So that what the English are inflicting on the English or the Irish, the Germans are inflicting on the Germans. And let's talk about the Hutsis and the Tutsis. What is going on in what the Japanese inflicted on the Chinese, by the way, unbelievable, the rape of Nanking. So as soon as you see that, you see this bigger problem, and you're more centered and understanding than you were before, and suddenly your own problems seem to shrink a little bit. Okay, and that's how it worked out actually. That was so. I'd say to these guys, listen, we're all going to be a little bit racist, even. But you don't become a non-racist. You transcend racism. You get beyond it. It's not, you don't have to overcome it. You're going to transcend it. You're going to go to this other place. But that's what an understanding of this will do for you.